The purpose of this podcast is simple. We want you to get to know your doctor before meeting them in person, because you're making a life-changing decision and time is scarce. The more you can learn about who your doctor is before you meet them, the better that first meeting will be. I'm your host, Eva Shea, and you're listening to Meet the Doctor. Welcome back to Meet the Doctor. My guest today is Dr. Amy Albright. She's a doctor of Chinese medicine and an executive coach and strategic advisor. She is in Nevada City, California. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Albright.
Thank you, Eva.
Okay, no one's ever been on the podcast from Nevada City. Where is that?
It's in California, despite its name. I guess the way that the state lines used to be drawn, it was in Nevada at one point. But it is about an hour northeast of Sacramento and about an hour, I think, away from Reno. So it's tucked up. The property that I'm standing on and that we do our work on is here amongst the cedar and fir trees, and it's gorgeous. And the land here is just so alive.
So it's a place where people come to work with you. Do they stay? Can they stay there with you?
They do, yeah. When they come for our intensive, they stay on site. We only have 3 people at a time. So we have a property that has some land and a large home and then 3 guest rooms. And I actually live here year round. So it has all of my love and presence infused into it. But we also have an entire floor of the building. It's quite a large home, and an entire floor of it is dedicated for our laboratory temple, I like to call it, a space where we do both biohacking and the sacred work of looking within.
How long have you been there on the property?
Only about a year and a half. I've been in practice for 23 years, and our prior location was in San Diego County in Oceanside. But I finally, as I call it, escaped the noise of Southern California after living down there my whole life.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy to be up here.
How much land is there? Or is it the kind of place I'm trying to picture that you could just go outside and walk around in nature for all day?
Yeah. I mean, it's not necessarily the land that I steward. That's a smaller parcel. I mean, it's large compared to some, just over 2.25 acres, but we have the ability to walk from our land through trails that go for hours. It feels vast and incredible, and it's 5 minutes away from downtown Nevada City with the cute little gold mining flair and incredible shops and an extraordinary community. So, yeah, just feeling really blessed to have found something that is so deeply inside of nature and so close to more people and community.
Did you find it yourself?
It's a really interesting story. I've been looking for home since I was a teenager, and I would go on road trips and try to find that place where I could be inside of nature and community with forward thinking people. Because a lot of the times when somebody puts themselves in a remote location, they also are putting themselves with people that aren't very open minded or seeking. And so I looked for a really long time. I ended up kind of just staying put inside of San Diego for a long period of time because that's where I had my son was born, and that's where I divorced. So I needed to make sure to stay in order to just have my time with him and not forfeit my time with him as a parent. And then I heard from actually a very new friend of mine, Stephen Dinan of the Shift Network lives up here too. He was telling me about Nevada City, and I was really hearing it with fresh ears. And when I came up here, I had a very powerful spiritual experience in the waters of the Yuba River that changed my life. And I decided, not immediately, but over the course of the next few days, it's not even that I decided, it came into full realization that this is home, the home that I've been looking for roughly 30 years.
How have you changed since you moved out there?
It's like my nervous system can finally relax and I can hear better. I can feel better. I feel more alive. I feel more centered.
Your background educationally was, I believe, in cognitive science.
Yeah. So to rewind back to when I was 18, I was a complete atheist, a hardcore skeptic, and studying neurosciences to understand the human experience, knowing that my sense back then was that if we could understand neurotransmitters, we could understand what it is to be alive and to have the human experience. So for anybody that's like, who is this woo lady? And she's not even an MD or, it's like, yeah, I get it. I get it. We can pray to false gods, basically. And I would say the biggest false god right now is the word data or the word science, because all of it is constructed by humans. And I realized that in my freshman year of my undergrad, as I was studying statistics and realizing how easy it is to massage data to say anything we want it to say, and how you can always find 3 studies that negate the one that gets publicized. So, what is the nature of reality was still my quest. I went for my first acupuncture session, and on the acupuncture table, the guy put in needles, walked out, left the room. I was in there just kind of marinating in it myself, and I had a massive spiritual awakening experience in which I could feel and trace the meridians exactly, which I didn't realize I could do. I mean, I didn't know that till he came back in the room and I was explaining to him exactly the pathways that I could feel. But while he was out of the room, I heard very clear messages from the other side. And I all at once, I call it a big bang moment because it's not logic. It is not sensical. But I had this experience of knowing that there was a God. And also then knowing that we would never explain with science everything that is real, which was a really big deal because I had dedicated my life to science. I was very young, but I was very intentional in that dedication. So basically, how it's gone since then is the merging of the worlds of science and spirituality, the merging of the mystical and the quantifiable. And it's, I think, an essential study, definitely for me, but I think for all of us, because we've lost the study of the spiritual inside of our desire to feel safe within constructs of the mind. The being with the spiritual in my story wove through, I changed from neurosciences, which would have had me dissecting lab rats, to cognitive psychology, to weave back around to your question, which is the understanding of how the brain impacts behavior, which I found to be fascinating, still very nerdy, very, very scientific. It was actually a very rigorous study. And I was studying to be a professor that would do research for the rest of her life. But I also, after that big bang, not only changed to cognitive sciences, but started to study anthropology, specifically that of the indigenous peoples of North and Central and South America, but also peoples around the world, to understand their ways of healing, their rites of passage, what they considered to be sacred. The weaving began still before I left my undergraduate degree. And then I went on a vision quest after I graduated. The reason that I went on the vision quest was twofold. One was I realized that if I was going to be an academic professor, they would want me to pick a theory and study it and study one area like memory or focus or something for the rest of my life. And I'm like, oh, that sounds like hell. I don't get to explore everything, so forget that. And the other reason was that I had been sent to acupuncture by my grandpa. And it turns out he was a consciousness student and had been studying transcendental meditation under the Maharishi since the 1950s and was a dear friend of the Maharishi. And so, what had happened also at the age of 18, in addition to switching to cognitive sciences and studying a lot of anthropology, is I began getting trained in consciousness by a man who had been walking that path for decades at that point and been sitting in meditation for at least an hour every day. And so he said to me, it's time for you to go on a trip. He didn't call it a vision quest, but that's what it was. You get a one-way ticket, you go somewhere hard. They can't speak English and no Europe. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I'm 22. Yeah. So I'm 22 years old and I chose to go to Costa Rica, which was not a place where you could take yoga classes back then. I was the only Caucasian woman that I saw for the first while. In the 2.5 months that I ended up staying there, I think there were maybe 4 other Caucasian women. I was there with the ticos and ticas. I was there with the people. I was hitchhiking. I was staying in houses with no walls, deep in the jungle of gold mining villages, miles from the nearest dirt road. I mean, it was a wild, wild adventure.
There's
And
no
I
like tour company for this, right?
no.
You just went there and kind of wandered around, almost like
Yeah,
being
yeah.
homeless in Costa Rica.
Kind of. I mean, I always had a great place to stay, but I never knew where I was going next or when I was going to the next place. And I just had my big backpack with me, and the plan was to follow and listen. And so I did. And I learned so much about myself and about life and the nature of reality, and how there's nothing outside of us that keeps us safe. It is only our internal calibration, it's only our internal understanding of our own safety that can keep us safe. Because I ended up in what should have been some dicey situations. And so I got to test my courage. I got to test my faith in all of that. So that path of a way of learning is not necessarily for everyone, but it was exactly right for me.
How did you know when it was time to come home?
I ran out of money.
Oh, okay.
Well, first, actually, when I ran out of money, I got a job at this little corner restaurant wherein I was the hostess, the waitress, and the cook. It was like a roll-up door with some bar stool seating in Puerto Viejo over on the Caribbean side. I thought, well, I'll keep on working. And then I realized I don't know, it just like, it kind of lost its steam, and I knew that I was done. There's only so much I want to stay tight because I couldn't move around. I had become tethered again because of money. And I was like, it just kind of lost the spirit of how I had been traveling. And the reason that I was there was I was asking for a sign about what to do. And I didn't get a sign about what to do while I was there, but what I got is many signs about who I be, how to be. And so I came home and I got a terrible job in corporate America where I was making less money than I had been waiting tables in my undergrad.
This is not
And
how the story is supposed to go.
no, I know, but that's how, yeah. And then I'm like, yeah, this fluorescent lighting and the kind of like the insanity of working inside of, I wasn't in a cubicle, but I was in a room with no windows with a bunch of people who were completely lost. And the amount of existential and personal pain that was for me was through the roof. And so I finally had a breaking open moment where I received a very clear and direct signal to go to school for Chinese medicine. Very clear. So it wasn't because some people might think, oh, well, she did that because she had such a big experience at age 18 of a spiritual Big Bang awakening. No, it was because I received explicit instruction. So I then went to Chinese medicine school, which is extremely rigorous. We have to learn the biomedicine, the modern medicine at a high level, including like pharmacology, orthopedic neurological evaluation. Like, we are people's primary care provider. And it's recognized to be so in the state of California. But we also have to learn hundreds of herbs, hundreds of acupuncture points, and then the entire cosmology and system and framework that holds all of those together, because everything in Chinese medicine is interconnected. I graduated from that kind of a shred. Honestly, I don't know anybody that gets through any version of medical school and sits for boards that feels healthy at the end. That's a whole, but I did it. And in my first month of practice, that's basically when I first, I'll say, allowed for the full intuitive capacity to spring forward. It had actually always been there, but I was disallowing it. I was discounting it. And I feel like that's a super important message, because I've been teaching as a part of my entire profession intuition. And I guess basically a core thing that I've noticed is most people have discounted and disenfranchised that part of themselves, and that it's always there. It's a part of our birthright. So I finally stepped into it when I graduated and started my practice, because I was seeing people. This is 23 years ago. People only came to acupuncturists when they were desperate. They were told that
They had tried everything else.
they had tried everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And they had either been diagnosed with something that was very, very much a label of suffering and permanence, like a lifelong disease, or they had been told they were going to die. And so that's a really intense patient population to start with.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I decided, and part of it was based on my grandpa's teaching. He used to say, every time you walk through a doorway, you're stepping through a portal wherein you don't understand what's on the other side of that doorway, and reinvent yourself every time you walk through a physical doorway in a structure. And so I would walk in with every single patient with the depth of prayer that said, teach me, heal me, guide me, show me the way. May I be used as a divine instrument. May the right messages come through. I know that there's nothing inside of Chinese medicine, modern medicine, any version of medicine that can heal this label. So I still desire to be of service in the highest. And I basically just cracked myself open again and again, Eva, to bring forward whatever it was that I could for these folks. And a lot of the times what that became was the messages that they were needing to hear. I could, because I silenced the noise inside of myself with the depth of that prayer. And I recognized that me trying to use my logic mind or me surrendering into the space of fear was an act of non-courageousness. That was a selfish act that did not support the patient. So it's inside of that space that I would hear what they were really saying or hear what was being spoken to me about them, and that I began to serve in a whole new way, than a different way than I had been taught. And I was still prescribing herbal medicine and supporting in all of the ways that I had been trained to, but after a number of years that dropped away because I just became known for and so deeply engaged in seeing people on a soul level and cutting through, because basically if our body is not feeling well, then we are not aligned on a spiritual or emotional level. The body is just showing us something. And so if I could get down to the core of that message and then potentially support them some as well with natural medicine, they would get well the majority of the time.
What
So
did you do when they didn't get well?
in some cases I helped them prepare to die. But they had a feeling, because of the way that we engaged, of it being a clear choice rather than something that was happening to them. They could see how it was happening for them and they could feel welcomed to the other side.
Reading about you before you came on the show, there's a couple things that stood out. And one is that sometimes you end up on podcasts with people that talk about other areas of transforming your life, like psychedelics.
Mhm.
And so how do those conversations go?
I feel like there's two major medicines that are very, very helpful for understanding what it is, that home inside or the truth that lives beneath all the noise. And I would say absolutely one of them is psychedelics. And I've taught on that. I do not serve psychedelics, but I advocate their use for people who it's appropriate for, which is actually a pretty decent number of people, a good percentage of people. So just to be clear, I'm not advising anybody to work with psychedelics because I don't even know the listener here, and that's not what I'm doing.
Sure.
But just generally speaking, I would say that psychedelics, like for instance with psilocybin, it really dismantles the default mode network, which is a part of the brain that makes us identify with the sense of self. And knowing that we have massive constructs of sense of self that are completely erroneous or lies, there's a huge gift that comes from that dismantling. I'm a very much an advocate. I feel like we can't leave psychedelics out of the conversation. And it's not about getting high, it's actually a deep spiritual path if one chooses to walk it. And then the other one that I would say, and this is the one that I am engaged with and do help, I'll say the medicine that I do help to serve is the neurosciences medicine. So working with neurofeedback therapy so as to not just get rid of depression and anxiety. Let's say 99% of what's out there in neurofeedback therapy or some very high percentage is going to be about removal of pathology. And I, of course, am interested in the removal of pain and pathology. But I think the bigger and more important thing to be aiming for is what is possible. What is that person's or that soul's essence top potential that they could possibly attain? And so the work that I've engaged in the last 13 years with Dr. Drew Pierson, most of which has been absolutely side by side, he is a neuroscientist that's been using neurofeedback therapy, wherein the brain learns in real time about what it's doing. He's been doing that for almost 30 years. And what we've developed together, and he is the true neuroscientist of the team, is the ability to utilize neurofeedback therapy in a way that is massively helpful for getting out of, let's say, the existential pain, right? Getting out of this pain of not knowing of oneself, dropping into deep states of wisdom, silencing the noise and stepping deeply into a sense of structure of path, even though the path is revealing itself, rather than trying to stay inside of the harness of the structure of the mind, which will inevitably create pain.
And so this is the therapy or the work that people come to you for help
It
with?
is. Yeah. What is the process? Yeah. There's a month or so of preparation and then a month or so of integration. But there's about 5 days on site. And during that time, we literally hook the person up to electrical studies, like the EEG studies that are done in all the top research institutes and by neurologists around the world. But we interpret the data of what the brain is doing electrically according to what academia knows. So we utilize the rigors of things coming out of Stanford and Harvard and places like that. But we've also developed and implemented our own methodologies that exist nowhere else besides inside of our practice. Basically, what neurofeedback therapy is, just because a lot of people don't know the context. And there's an initial measure of the EEG, which is a huge amount of data that was deeply, deeply studied, like 30 minutes to an hour of studies with just to be able to really understand what's going on there. And then that information is utilized to create a map, basically a treatment strategy with very specific, highly, highly specific targets. So it's not just training for waves like alpha or theta waves or things like that, but being able to go into that same place that I was describing, the default mode network, and tell that network for instance, just to chill out. Right. And then so if we tell that part of ourselves that's got this false sense of self, that's actually, my job title, my position, I'm a mom, I'm a, whatever, I do this for a living, I'm a woman, whatever all of that structure is, or I'm somebody that hates this or likes that, or I had this trauma, like we can shift that perception and also up level their capacity to sense the world beyond, to be able to sense themselves as a part of the all that is, so that basically there's a bigger context for knowing oneself and knowing truth. So how we do that is very complex, but on the very most simple level, the information from the brain in real time is being fed into a computer. And neurofeedback therapy then is that information is coming back to the brain, not to the mind, but the brain is perceiving colors and sights maybe on a screen or sounds that are telling that it's directly communicating with the brain faster than the mind can perceive, if they're reducing the overabundance of signal inside of the default mode, or how are their amygdala, by the way, there are two amygdala, it's usually thought of as a singular. It's a singular plural. So what are the amygdala doing, and how is the cerebellum functioning in such a way that it's feeding that information of either fear or peacefulness to the amygdala? So all of those things can be measured, and then the brain be taught how to function without overusing a certain area and without underusing certain areas and or networks of communication. And that brings the brain into a symphony like it's never known. And then the person starts to feel really good. And sometimes people have what feels like a full-blown psychedelic adventure. And yet they're just, like I said, we don't serve psychedelic medicine. But all of those neurotransmitters and the processes exist inside of us. That's part of the beauty of understanding the brain and understanding what's possible. So people will have massive experiences and their brain learns a new version of a way to be, a more pristine homeostasis that's running without fear or a lot of wasted energy. And then they take that with them. So we get an immediate, on average, maybe a 40% change in the brain in 5 days, which is astounding. And then the changes grow in over time as the neural tissue grows in, which is at about 1 millimeter a month. So over the next 4 to 6 months or so, the brain continues to solidify the learnings.
There are things that sound similar here to me as someone who I've never heard of this before, and I think probably most people haven't. But I have heard of CBT and EMDR, and I wonder if can I make a connection to like this being a much better or more involved version of things that are much more common like that?
Yeah. Like for instance, with EMDR, I would guess that it's similar, like the way that we help people to rewrite moments of trauma. The function of the rewrite is probably largely the same. So in the hippocampus, which is a structure inside of the brain that relates very much so to memory, there are often protein structures, literal protein structures that bind the brain in a certain way to have an emotion with the memory. So with my guess, because I'm not an expert in EMDR, but my guess would be that the function is the same. Like in EMDR, you can go through and change how those protein structures are working or how they're bound. With neurofeedback therapy, you actually are being told in that precise moment at the level of the brain communicating to the brain how to do that at the most, like the penultimate of efficiency and accuracy. And just for a bit of context, similarly to how EMDR is administered within a therapeutic context, it's not like you just go and you only do EMDR and you've never talked to that therapist before. It's something that you do as it becomes ready, right? Like as it's
Yeah.
correct to do. You identify a topic and you get in there and you work with it in that way. And within our program, it's not just all wires, as you might imagine, with myself and Dr. Pierson, Dr. Drew Pierson co-facilitating. I'm also weaving in the soul medicine. I'm also weaving in that deepest information that's available to that person. And the way that I move through, because I'm not a psychotherapist, I'm not a therapist in any regard, but the way that I move through it as a spiritual guide is often just cutting right through all of the illusion and finding the kernel that's running the whole thing. And so when I present that to people and then they go into this neurofeedback therapy, certain kinds of the training, they have the very most precise, I like to call it target within all of that. And then the most precise of neurology in that moment, attunement to be able to release. So the releases are tremendous and they're characterized by ease, not by like a lot of weeping or pain. Because if you are in a place of neurological alignment at that level and you have like real clarity on the whole process, there's not a lot of time needed and there's not a lot of pain in the healing process. So that's one of the things that I love to really, one of my personal favorite things to debunk is that pain has to come with the healing process. It's like, no, it's actually the relief of pain. And it can be super easy and extremely efficient if it's
It
done
also sounds to
well.
me like the actual definition of what biohacking should be, which is it shouldn't really be that hard if you're hacking it. It should be easy.
But I think a
It's
lot of the
amazing.
way that we've taken on biohacking or the utilization of high-tech equipment for, the betterment of ourselves is very much inside of like a toxic framework that we live in our society right now, wherein it's actually competitive and not listening to the body, not in harmony with the body. And the real, in my estimation, like the real utilization for biohacking is actually the evolution of consciousness, the evolution of awareness and wisdom. So if you're caught inside of like competitively comparing HRV scores or how long you can hold yourself in an ice bath, you're actually just caught in the same paradigm of competing for money or status or whatever else might be going on in a kind of a pathological way, because the real study is within, right? What's the gateway that ice bath can bring you towards yourself and toward freedom? It's a very different focus.
It sounds better to me.
It's way better. And there's a call for more of this inside of the biohacking space. And I think it's especially clear for women. A lot of, I think, the traditional or more well-known, traditional is a funny word because biohacking was only invented as a term maybe 10 years ago. And there's those of us that have been doing it for 20 or 30 years. But anyway, a lot of what became popularized is kind of that toxic version of it. And that toxic version hits women's bodies even harder because we're not designed the same. And we're actually meant to bring forward the understanding of it being, I think, administered in this more gentle and holistic way, rather than being so,
I'm the
about a dopamine
toughest.
rush and all
Yeah.
of the stuff that it could get confused as.
Yeah. When someone comes to you for help, there's an intersection here of what you're doing and who you're doing it for, and again, what I've read about you is that you help people like CEOs or people at high levels perform better by breaking through things that are holding them back. When I read that, I thought, oh, you're like the Wendy Rhodes character on Billions. Did you watch Billions?
I've been told
Oh, have you told
that. Yeah,
people have
I've
told you this before?
I have,
That's
yeah.
not
I
the
couldn't
first.
actually watch Billions because it reminded me too much of what I grew up in.
Mm,
Not in my entire family, but there was a segment of my family that absolutely fought for power and money at such a
yeah.
level that I learned at a very early age how much corruption can really impact love and connection and safety and all of those things. So yeah, it is very
So
similar to
she's
that.
the
I
dark
basically,
version of you.
yeah. Well, the whole show was the dark version for sure.
Yeah.
As far as, I mean, I watched maybe 2 episodes, if that's fair to say. But I would say that I am definitely, so something that people know about me if they work with me is that I cannot be paid to lie to them. If I say something, it's because as the best at the depths of my knowing, it is true about them and for them. Which I think is very important for people who are in those masterful, if I'm working with billionaires, if I'm working with very, very high level CEOs, if I'm working with people who are in the limelight, they basically have a huge number of people that will tell them whatever they want to hear because they're trying to utilize them.
Yep.
And I have no taste for it. And I will lovingly call out and call to their attention whatever it is that needs to be heard for them to, I would say, escape all of that even and come into a true freedom, and also be able to hold the mantle of responsibility. So, I have massive compassion and understanding for what it is to be in some of these very difficult leadership roles and help to steward those folks through from a really, like I said, a genuine place. I offer my heart and my love to those that I work with in the deepest of ways. I devote myself to their path in all the ways that I know how. So it's a very different thing than like, oh, I'm an executive coach, which is a true term, but like not really a great descriptor for how I function. Yeah.
When you are in those roles or in those positions where your own mind is the thing that's holding you back and you can recognize that, that's also really conflicting because then you have to figure out how to fix it.
Right. And sometimes people, the reason that they have built their empires or their realities is to avoid looking inside. Right? They're wanting to avoid that very pain. And so it takes courage, it takes strategy, and it often takes a guide. So and I would say the strategy isn't just in the dismantling, but the knowing where you're going. You don't want to take somebody that has a huge amount of bandwidth and just tell them to stop. A lot of, I think, the spiritual teachings from the past can be very castrating, basically. And I don't mean that only for men. It can be very disabling to just say, sit and meditate and stop wanting. It's actually the human desire that moves us all forward. So, what is it that we are wanting? How clean and clear are we inside of that wanting? And that our wanting is for not just for our good, but for greater good. And this can't come from the intellectual mind. There's got to be then the resolution of when you were 7 and like, whatever, like all the different things that kind of come into play. So that's why I am so passionate about making quick work, because we don't have decades to just, like, let's say, sit around and navel gaze and figure out like all of the pathology, but rather dismantle the pathology so that we can step into the light, so that we can step into the true mantle of leadership. Because this is something that it takes actually great courage and presence to be able to do. And it doesn't matter how much money you make or the technical role you hold in society. You can be a part of things in such a way that you are a conduit for miracles, you are a conduit for love and connection. And what else are we doing here if we're not that? So that to me is leadership. And I think to that regard, just something that I'd also like to speak to is that the ancient teachings can seem very irrelevant in today's modern society. And really understanding that we are all interconnected is also highly impractical if it's just existing at the level of the mind. And so, what I love to do and what I love to teach and spread as a message is that all of this is actually extremely practical and is to be felt inside of our body. If we hold the construct of oneness inside of our head, we just then have another way to beat ourselves up. Oh, not only did I be the hamster on the wheel that's run around and, done too many things, and I didn't get enough sleep and I didn't eat properly, and did I spend enough focused time with my child, or, whatever the different things that can go on. Now we're like, yeah, and I'm also just like really sucking at this whole development of understanding, or not at all inside of this feeling of the interconnectedness. And because it's a thought construct, right? And so it's okay if we're in that phase. There's nothing wrong with that. But can we then dive into the feeling of interconnected even if it only exists for 1 second at a time? Can we put more and more seconds together? Because the more seconds that we can string together, now it becomes more of a reality, becomes more of a framework. And we start to notice that, let's say we're 5 minutes in on a feeling of interconnectedness and peace, and then reality starts showing up differently because reality augments based on the way that we are believing and what we're emitting. Okay, so then reality starts to show up differently. Might not be perfect, might not be exactly what we want, but are we noticing that we're still having the steering wheel? That we're not a victim of life, but that we are a creator of it, and that we're co-creating life with the entire canvas of this earth, the trees, the animal, all the other animals, and including the humans. And if instead of fighting and rejecting and projecting judgments on each other, can we hold a continual state as much as we know how of understanding and compassion and love? What is the pain? What is the perspective that the other is coming from? Who is it that I really am, and what am I really doing? And being able to hold this deeper framework and hold it in our bodies. So something that I wanted to offer is that on our website, there is a free tool, which is a massive tool. And it's downloadable. You have to just put in your email address, and then you've got this tool. And you can listen to it. It's about a 20-minute long recording, and it's actually helping the body to shift out of the state of fear and into a state of calm and be able to open up the energetic and mind perception, the body perception of the interconnectedness. And then that practice, although it's taught in 20 minutes as eyes closed, can be done all day long with eyes open safely, because it's not so much a meditation as it is a practice of how to utilize our physical body and our energy body, how to shift the perception of the mind. And that tool all by itself, Eva, has been so massively powerful for people. It's just something that I want to offer, at least as a step for folks, because I recognize that I come in and I set the sights broad and wide and deep.
I'm
Hopefully
glad
this
you have that.
conversation in of itself will be
I was
helpful.
going to say, well, what can we do?
Yeah.
And you answered it before I asked it. I'll make sure we put it in the show notes so it's really easy to find. And I'll
Okay.
definitely try it myself too.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
Where can people find out more about your work and what you do, or potentially reach out?
Probably right now the best resource would be our website, which is holonexperience.com. Holon is a word that implies the holographic or the interconnectedness of all things. But then the word experience is an important second word, as you might have heard in our conversation today. So HOLON experience.com.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Albright.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on.
There's no substitute for an in-person appointment, but we hope this comes close. If you're considering making an appointment or are on your way to meet this doctor, be sure to let them know you heard them on the Meet the Doctor podcast. Check the show notes for links, including the doctor's website and Instagram, to learn more. Are you a doctor, or do you know a doctor who'd like to be on the Meet the Doctor podcast? Book your free recording session at meetthedoctorpodcast.com. Meet the Doctor is made with love in Austin, Texas, and is a production of The Axis, TheAxis.io.